Welcome to Soccer Down Here's coverage of the USL Championship, the biggest story. Before we get into what is going on this upcoming weekend, we'll take a look at the standings, take a look at juice boxes as we know them, and some of the big matchups coming up this weekend. Biggest story comes out of Indianapolis, where Martin Rennie and the Indy 11 have decided to part ways. Indy 11's start not to the liking of the front office and the ownership, so there's going to be a change at the helm. Play-by-play voice of the Indy 11, one of the originals, Greg Rakestraw, caught up with us at Soccer Down Here, Jason Longshore and myself earlier on this week. And here was our conversation about the change on the touchline.
Greg Rakestraw, how are you?
I'm good. How are we doing?
Doing good. Jason Longshore, John Nelson, Soccer Down Here. We're live on Twitch. Thanks for taking the time for us this morning. We appreciate it.
Of course, fellas. Happy to help.
So, just give us the rundown on Indy this season. I was a little surprised by the news that came out this week with Martin Rennie and the club parting ways. It felt like Indy's been really, really close to being a consistent member of that upper echelon. Were you surprised by the announcement? Did you see it coming for a little while?
To some degree, although it was a swift and sudden fall after what was very much a high for Martin, the franchise, finally winning against Louisville. You know, like so many other teams, especially in the East, Louisville has been the standard, and for Indy, Louisville has been the stumbling block. You know, Indy beat Louisville in their first matchup as league opponents in May of 2018. They hadn't beaten Louisville again until 2 weeks ago, until May the 29th. Obviously, losing them in the playoffs in 2018, you know, being up in the 93rd minute of the Eastern Conference Final 2 years ago, and then losing in added time by a score of 3-1. Louisville had always been a stumbling block. So when Indy got that victory against Lou City, everybody said, okay, here we go. This is backing up the results we saw in the preseason. And then the next four matches, Indy got 1 point. And yes, the last two matches were against good teams in El Paso and Pittsburgh, but the offense was next to nothing in terms of its ability to generate shots and generate goals on a regular basis. So I knew the way that the season ended last year that there might be a hook coming at some point this year if things did not go well. So big picture, was I surprised? No. If you had told me 2 weeks ago that Martin's last victory coming against Louisville City, I would have been absolutely stunned.
Greg, coming into this season, obviously divisions kind of juggled a little bit and expectations are always high, but what was the vibe from the fans and everyone that you got to talk to leading into the season about what the expectations were for Indy 11 and comparing it to the start and where you are now?
Compete with Louisville for the division championship. You know, that is always the expectation. And yes, there is this feeling that Indy should be in the upper echelon of teams because of the fan base, because of the track record. You know, it was thought, hey, at worst, you're a playoff team. And we're 8 games in, and, you know, the Central Division is a wonderfully jumbled mess. Frankly, I think the guys that you follow on a regular basis might be the biggest surprise so far, at least from a positive perspective, in terms of Atlanta United, too. But the expectations were if you can win the division or be competitive with Louisville, that will then lead to opportunities in the postseason. So this is a franchise that expects to compete for championships. In 2018, making the playoffs was the win because of the dramatically late move to get out of the crumbling NASL and join the USL Championship. By 2019, this is one of the best teams in the league. For the first half of last year, this is one of the best teams in the league, but you have that stumble down the stretch. You miss the playoffs after winning your first 4 games in a 16-game schedule and winning 5 of your first 6. That leads to some question marks. You lose 3 in a row. You're not playing great soccer. There's signs of guys being disconnected and some discontention, and that's why the plug was pulled so quickly.
In some ways, do you feel like a move like this just solidifies what the expectation is from the club to the fans? So now I think it's really clear that they've invested on the roster. I mean, you've got a number of guys who've been stars in this league, and that expectation is that investment should pay off with results. This is a results business, and ultimately, I think this reinforces that in a way to the fan base.
That is absolutely correct. No, this is a club that is willing to spend money at this level. Again, is it spending money in comparison to what MLS teams do? Of course not. But are the Indy 11 a club that outspends many of their counterparts in the USL Championship? Absolutely it is. And this is also a club that, frankly, is lucky enough that they can spend money because this is a team that is, well supported. For a Tuesday night game, we had 5,000 folks in the building on Tuesday night. We had a fantastic crowd for a Tuesday night game. We were one of the handful of teams that were allowed to have some level of fans at games last year, in part because we played at Lucas Oil Stadium, and it was a much more spread out and larger venue. Now there is that return to Carroll Stadium. So absolutely, this is, after you miss the playoffs, the automatic idea is, hey, if you make the playoffs, it's a good season. And there's some truth to that. But this is a team that expects to be competitive for the top of their division. And again, because of who is in this division in Louisville, that says a lot. And, we're going to see a good test for this Indy team because they're playing at Lou City again next Saturday. That's by no means overlooking Sporting Kansas City 2 coming up on Sunday. But we're going to have an idea where this team is over the course of the next couple of matches.
And Greg, with a coaching change at the quarter pole, it now presents a challenge for the front office in either bringing in an individual from the outside that can instantly assimilate and try to get the team back on track, back to where the expectations are, or, staying somewhat within the family to make sure that the continuity is there. It's an interesting challenge and a big conundrum for this front office at a key point, knowing what the team wants to accomplish year in and year out.
Correct. And I think there are options for both. So let's talk about the current staff. Max Rogers was added in April. Max was on Steve Tritchew's staff in St. Louis the last couple of years. I actually was brought in before that by Pulis to come and be a part of things in St. Louis and stuck around for Steve Tritchew last year. Other than that, you've got Phil Presser and Andy Swift, both who have been guys with Martin Rennie for the duration. Phil has a lot of local ties here because Phil has connections to the Indiana Fire Academy, whom the Indy 11 will work with. Also, still works the junior program. Andy Swift was a guy that actually has connections not far from you guys. He was at Jacksonville State for many years, working at the college level over in Alabama, and now has been with the Indy 11 for the last 3 or 4 years as the goalkeeper coach. The other name that, even though he's not on the payroll now, would be considered part of the family would be Juan Guerra. Juan played for us in his last year as a player in 2018. Very well liked as a player, been a very much respected coach, kind of Martin's right-hand man the last couple of years. Had what he thought was a better offer in Phoenix, and clearly, Phoenix, much like Louisville, much like Indy, are teams you go, hey, they're going to win and be successful every year in the championship. Juan is there. Is there a phone call extended to him? Because he was really kind of with the club through March and knows all the returning players, had a hand in Manuel Arteaga coming here from Venezuela. And so it would be a very quick assimilation process if the phone call is to Juan, hey, we want you to come back and join the Indy 11. Might there have to be compensation going from the Indy 11 to Phoenix Rising in terms of money or a player perhaps? But again, that's something that could be worked out. So those are the guys that would be in the building or close to it to talk to. Now let's talk about the obvious names, and I mentioned one of them, okay? Steve Tritchew was very impressive last year in St. Louis, given what he did, and the fact that potentially he can be brought back to this level, coaching against players he knows very well. He played the Indy 11 4 times last season, kind of knows how they're built, et cetera. And the other obvious fact is that John Hackworth is available.
He is.
And clearly John did a wonderful job with Lou City. I'm still unsure as to all the reasons why he elected to leave after the first game of the season. But there are some quality candidates kind of floating out there in the ether that I'm sure that Greg Stremlaw, the team CEO, is doing his due diligence on as we speak.
You mentioned it a little bit with Guerra, and I want to dig into this for some of our listeners who are kind of based in the Southeast and know Indy but don't know the ins and outs. The culture that's been built around the club is incredibly strong, and it's something that's powered, I think, the club's growth. How important do you think it would be to, in weighing this decision, go to somebody within the family versus somebody from the outside?
I think the two names from the outside that I mentioned
because of the instant recognition of having played against those teams for literally half of your games last year. I think there would be buy-in, from the fan base. Obviously if it's Juan Garrett, it'd be an immediate positive check mark from the fan base. There are two other current assistant coaches that deserve a mention that date back to the old days, as in the NASL days, when we were talking about the Indy 11 playing the Atlanta Silverbacks, not Atlanta United 2. One of them is Colin Falvey, who is now the top assistant out in Sacramento and has been for the last couple of years. He was on the NASL spring season champion team for the Indy 11 in 2016, was the team captain, played here 2 years for Tim Hankinson. The other name that merits a mention is Nemanja Vukovic. He is an assistant coach for FC Tulsa, and FC Tulsa looked great. Michael Encian's team coming in here and beating Indy, 3-0 on May the 18th. Ever since you saw those guys on May 19th, clearly things have gone downhill for Tulsa. But the guy we all could call Buko around here deserves a mention as well. So, because there has been a track record of success and because there is a sizable fan base for this level, yes, guys with familial ties, for lack of a better term, have been brought up. But if you bring in a guy that has been successful, especially in the Eastern Conference, in the USL Championship, I think the fan base would buy in immediately to a name like that.
Greg Rakestraw, play-by-play voice of the Indy 11, hanging out with us here on Soccer Down here as we take a look at the USL Championship with the big news of Martin Rennie being dismissed, the club parting ways with him earlier this week. As one of the originals, as someone who has been there from the beginning, seeing the growth of the team, seeing to where it is right now, there are multiple levels of importance in this hire because of the expectations and everything that we've seen. What does your gut tell you about the direction that the team will go? Or is your gut telling you anything about the direction the team will go?
I think they can frankly go both angles. But here is the one thing that and it's not about whom they're going to hire, but about the speed in which they're going to make that hire. I have zero problem if the Indy 11 take their time. And I don't mean like, hey, we're going to write up this interim group for the rest of the year. No, but there have been some that said, hey, you need to have somebody in place by next Saturday's game. No, you don't. And let me give the ultimate example in terms of, again, the organization that Indy competes with, but also would be wise to emulate, and that is Lou City. Let's go back to 2018. James O'Connor gets the job with Orlando City in Major League Soccer basically at the end of June. And for a period of about 40 days, 3 players coached that team, and Luke Spencer, George Davis, and Paolo Del Piccolo. John Hackworth comes in. Basically, I think his first game might have been against the Indy 11 in mid-August, and that team goes on to win the USL Cup the very next year, and then at the end of that year, and then they make the final the year following that. And so I think there's enough of a core of veteran players here and assistant coaches that know the way that things have been done. I think if you're Greg Stremlaw and Ursal Ozdemir, the team owner, you can take your time to a degree. I don't think you will see this interim trio of assistant coaches be the guys that will be in charge in the next 24 matches, but I don't think you have to have a hire by tomorrow either. You can take a little bit of time. You can take 2, 3, 4 weeks and make sure you find the right guy for the job and hope that person can hit the ground running at some point during the month of July. And also from a standpoint that there is a little more space between matches in terms of July. I think the only midweek match that Indy has is at your guys' place on July 7th. Other than that, it is all Saturday matches during the course of the month of July. So I do think, given the parameters of being in season, Indy 11 will take a little bit of time to find the right guy for the job.
I've got one more for you, Greg. I want to get into the big picture of this division. When the lineups were shuffled a little bit to see who was going to be paired up with who, this division jumped out to us here in Atlanta, obviously looking at a club that is a second team and trying to develop talent first, but going up against heavyweights in the USL Championship like Lou City, like Indy 11. Birmingham and Tulsa have stepped up this year. This division feels like it's going to go down to the last few weeks of the season with so much talent investment, but also the quality that Atlanta United 2's brought in, Sporting Kansas City 2, as we saw them a couple weeks ago, what they can provide. I don't think there's an easy night at the office in this division. How have you looked at it as you've seen games from around the division outside of Indy's games?
I thought there was a clear line of demarcation between 4 and 5 going in, but it was in not this particular order: Indy, Louisville, Birmingham, and Tulsa.
Sure.
And then the next group would have been AU 2, Sporting Kansas City 2, Memphis, given their very late roster build, in OKC. And obviously OKC's already made a coaching change as well. Happened right after the Indy 11 game when they played to a 1-1 draw back on June 2nd. I think Atlanta United 2 is obviously the one that has kind of jumped the void. And they are into that mix. This is the best we have seen them over the course of Indy now being in their conference or division for 3 of the last 4 years. They, to me, have been, from simply a playing standpoint, the story so far of this group of 8. The other thing to throw out again, and I don't know from a talent standpoint, in terms of Memphis long term, but because of the bit of the kiss given to them by the league, knowing they were slow in getting set and prepared for this coming year, they have an inordinate amount of games in the last month of the season. I think they're looking at 8 or 9 games in October. So if they can just be within striking distance of a playoff spot come October, they have all of these games in hand where they can jump some people in the division, again, just by way of the schedule. So I do think this is a bit more muddied and a bit more jumbled than probably we anticipated going into this season. And frankly, that's a good thing for everybody involved.
All right, Greg, time for the promo. For those down here in our footprint that want to keep an eye on everything going on in your section of the division, especially heading into match week this weekend, how do they do it?
Well, simply put, obviously we broadcast all of our games on ESPN+. We do a total of 20 games, both road and home combined, on local television, MyIndyTV 23 or Wish TV Channel 8. Next broadcast for us will be next Saturday against Lou City, our first of 4 road telecasts this year. I host our weekly radio show, Soccer Saturday, which airs on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan in Indianapolis. Podcast available immediately after the show, or simply follow me on Twitter at Greg Rakestraw, because I tend to tweet about Indy 11 stuff all the darn time.
Kind of like us in Atlanta United too. Greg, thanks for hopping on with us here as we always cover the USL Championship in this particular block of the show every week. Thanks for hanging out with us. I know it's been a difficult week for fans of the Indy 11, and I know there's a lot of stuff that you look forward to every single week, and the fans look forward to every single season. Thanks for hanging out with us here on Soccer Down Here.
You got it, fellas. We'll talk to you before that match coming up in July.
Now that brings us to the standings as we head into this weekend and take a look at things. And we'll start with the division that we were talking with Greg about, the Central. Birmingham, with a 2-0 loss, had their 4-match win streak snapped. They're at the top of the ladder at 16 points after 9 matches played. Lou City, with their win, gets 3 points. They pole vault from 10 points to 13, having won 2 in a row. Tulsa, after breaking their 3-game losing streak, got a win on the board. They're now at 12 points ahead of Atlanta United 2 because of matches played. FC Tulsa having only played 7 to Atlanta United 2's 9. They are both at 12 points. That is north of the playoff bar. Indy 11, after 8 matches, 3-4-1, after having lost 3 in a row, they are at 10 points. Memphis 901 with their win 1-0 over a 10-man Atlanta United 2. They are at 8 points. Sporting Kansas City 2 has lost 2 of their last 5 after 9 matches. They're at 7 points. OKC Energy still winless on the year at 0-4-4. They're at the bottom with 4 points. Looking at the Atlantic Division, Tampa Bay on top, 18 points, 6 wins out of 7 played. Charlotte have won 2 of their last 3. They're at 12. Pittsburgh with the 1-0 win over Indy 11. They are at 11 points. Hartford Athletic ahead of the Miami FC on goal difference. They are at 10 points. The Miami FC at a goal difference of -1, 9 goals behind at 10 points. Red Bulls 2 with a win last time out. They are at 8 points. Charleston Battery at 1-1-2, 2 postponements in a row at Patriots Point because of the incredible rains that have happened there in the Low Country. They're at 5 points. And Loudoun United, having lost 4 of their last 5, they're at 1-5 on the year. They are at 3 points. Western Conference, Mountain Division, Rio Grande Valley, we caught up with the RGVFC and their head coach, Wilmer Cabrera. They're at 16 points, having won 2 of their last 3. New Mexico United won 2 of their last 3 as well. They're at 4-2-2 at 14 points. El Paso Locomotive, I think they're the only team still that is not lost a match this year. 3-0-3 after 6. They're at 12. Austin at 11 points. They're in 4th. San Antonio FC at 10. Colorado Springs gets their first win at their new downtown stadium. They're at 8 points in 6th. Real Monarchs, having lost 3 of their last 4, they are at 5 points. Pacific Division, Phoenix, 5-1-1 with a goal difference of plus 13. They're at 16 points. Los Dos, LA Galaxy 2, have lost 3 of their last 4, but they are still at 11 points, 5 back of Phoenix. Orange County SC is at 10 points, having won 2 of their last 3. San Diego 2-0-2 in their last 4. They are at 8 points north of the playoff bar. A lot of folks at 7 points. Goal difference separating Sacramento, Tacoma, and Las Vegas Lights, -3, -4, and -9 on the board. Sacramento on top in 5th. Tacoma in 6th, Vegas Lights are in 7th, and Oakland, having only played 4 matches this year after getting off to their late start, they are at 1-2-1 and at 4 points. Matches coming up this weekend, we'll get into that in just a sec. On Friday, 2 matches, Charleston and the Miami FC. Charleston, according to your juice boxes, is a plus 114. Miami FC, the Miami FC is at a plus 204, and your draw is a plus 262. And at 10 o'clock Eastern time on Friday, Real Monarchs, a plus 326 at home as El Paso Locomotive come to town. El Paso a minus 130. And your draw option is a plus 263. Looking at the schedule for the upcoming weekend, just to kind of give you an idea as to what else is going to be going on Saturday and Sunday as we progress through after the big midweek on Wednesday. Saturday, Hartford hosts Loudoun at Dillon Stadium at 7 o'clock. Birmingham Legion tries to snap back after losing last time out. They host Austin. 7:30 at Al Lang. Tampa hosts Pittsburgh. 8 o'clock at 1 OK Field. FC Tulsa hosts Lou City. Big road trip for that one. Big game in the Central Division. Memphis 901, can they continue their momentum? 8:30 at AutoZone, taking on OKC Energy. And out west, it is Oakland hosting Sacramento at Laney College. Toyota Field, San Antonio FC hosting RGV. 10:30 at Cashman, Las Vegas Lights hosting Orange County. And at 10:30, San Diego is hosting Phoenix. Big match out west. Sunday, Sporting Kansas City 2 at Children's Mercy Park at 5 o'clock, hosting Indy 11. Tuesday, the 22nd, Austin hosting Colorado Springs. And that is at Bolt Stadium on the campus of the Circuit of the Americas. That's a look at your schedule upcoming, some of the news and notes that have come across the table here in the USL Championship over the last little bit. Take a look at your Week 8 Team of the Week presented by Clear Audio. A couple of familiar names to those here in the eastern half of the country. Alejandro Guido, your midfielder from San Diego, ends up as your Player of the Week for his work there for San Diego. In net, Ben Lunt for Phoenix Rising. Back line of Joaquin Varela from San Antonio, Sean Tosh from Lou City. We've had the chance to see him against Atlanta United 2. Macaulay King also at the back in a back line of 3 for El Paso. Midfield of 4, Milan Iloski from Real Monarchs to go with Guido, Diego Luna from El Paso, and Jake Arman from Charlotte Independence. Solomon Asante makes an appearance for Phoenix Rising. Enoch Mushagalusa, who you saw from Sporting Kansas City 2 with his brace against Atlanta United 2, and J.J. Williams from Birmingham Legion. Don't forget, you can vote for Save of the Week and Goal of the Week by going to the USL Championship webpage at uslchampionship.com. Take a look at the power rankings as we go through Week 8. And at the top, no real surprise, it is El Paso going over Tampa and Phoenix because El Paso, the only team that hasn't lost so far this year, staying at number 1. You've got Tampa, Phoenix, RGV, Birmingham Legion up 2 spots to number 5. New Mexico United staying at 6. Lou City up 3 points to number 7. Charlotte up 4 to number 8. San Antonio and Hartford dropping to 9 and 10. Atlanta United 2 stays at number 13. FC Tulsa stays at 15. The Miami FC stays at 16. Indy 11 big fallers from 9 to 18. And Charleston drops 1 to 23. Sporting Kansas City 2 drops 1 to 24. And wrapping up, it is Memphis 901 at 28 before their win against Atlanta United 2 in a 2-match week. Loud at 29, OKC Energy at number 30. Thanks for hanging out with us for another go-around of everything going on in the USL Championship. Enjoy the games, everybody. Play it safe. We'll see you next time.